Welcome to Pro Practice, your guide to piano mastery. I'm Josh Wright, and today's episode is based on the Prelude and Fugue in D major, BWV 850 from the Well-Tempered Clavier, Book I. Before we get started with today's tutorial, which we have a lot to cover, I thought I would just start by playing a few bars of the Prelude and then a few bars of the Fugue in case you're not familiar with this piece. Okay, a beautiful little figuration prelude. We see those same figurations over and over again. We'll get to that more in a moment. And then the fugue starts with a rest, and then it is in the style of a French overture. And we will be going over a lot of different things in this tutorial, including fingering, interpretation, whether we should use the pedal or not at all. There's a lot of strong opinions about that. How we should use shape, there's also a lot of strong opinions on that in Bach's music. But before we do that, I just wanted to say how happy I am to be covering this piece by Bach. I have found his music to be very therapeutic, especially the older I get. This Prelude and Fugue has a special place in my life. This was the very first Bach piece I ever learned. I think I was 10 or 11 years old. It was right after I had started with Susan Duhlmeier. And I'd probably played some things from the Notebook of Anna Magdalena Bach when I was younger with my grandma, but this was the first Prelude and Fugue she ever gave me, and I think it's been about 23 years since I've played it, and I just spent the last few days bringing this back into my fingers, making some markings, going over this to know how to best teach it to each of you to hopefully help you in your practice efficiency. I have a lot of suggestions that will hopefully help loosen up your hands, reduce tension, give you ideas for that artistic interpretation, and maybe dispel some of the myths about Bach's music. The first thing that I want to strongly encourage you to think about is this idea that some purists say this should be played in a flat manner because Bach was writing for the harpsichord. And my response to that is always, if you want it to sound like that, why don't you go play the harpsichord? I certainly, having looked at much of the output of Bach, not just his keyboard works, but all of his beautiful other compositions, I certainly do not think he was lacking expression or beauty or depth. So I think that I would be willing to bet a large sum of money that if he was alive today, of course this is just my opinion, that he would want to use the capabilities of this instrument. Having said that, though, that does come with a few disclaimers. I don't want you to get romantic with your rubato. So you wouldn't want... you know, and be so expressive and kind of stopping and starting, ebbing and flowing a lot with the tempo as you might in more romantic composers. I also don't think that you need the expanse of dynamics that you might get in a composer like Rachmaninoff, where you're playing big fortissimos. You certainly don't need it in these smaller pieces that we're covering today, this Prelude and Fugue. Another thing that I wanted to go over is the myth that you can never use pedal in Bach's music. I've thought a lot about this, and I've done a lot of studies on this. And some of my very favorite Bach players, Daniel Trifonov, Sergei Babayan. I also really respect the recordings of Murray Pariah. Murray Pariah was my hero growing up. I loved his works. He's very on the side of hardly ever using pedal. Andras Schiff, the same thing, and Glenn Gould uses very little pedal. However, I'm very convinced that the pedal should be only deployed depending on the acoustics of the room you're in. The reason is, I won't name the name, but I was watching an interview of a very famous pianist, and he was demonstrating, he was advocating for the use of very little pedal, and it sounded dry and brittle. Because it was close mic'd and the room had terrible acoustics. But then when you listen to Andras Schiff's recording, the recording was not Schiff, by the way, that I was watching. But when you listen to Schiff's recording of this, he is in a gorgeous concert hall, I believe, or they added a lot of reverb after the fact in a studio recording. I don't know where it was. And that reverb made up for any sense of over dryness. So all of this to say there's almost no pedal in this prelude, but I will use it to connect certain things in the fugue. For instance, I just think that sounds good. It sounds more resonant. I'm not mixing any seconds. I'm not doing that by any means. Pedal, just so I can reset the hand and connect that F sharp to the next F sharp, because you can't physically do that on the piano. It sounds good without it as well. However, I like the resonance with it. So that's just my opinion. I just wanted to start this video off with that because you will see a pedal cam on here, and I didn't want to, offend all the viewers like, oh, this is absolute garbage because he's using pedal in Bach. You can set your foot down and just try to do it more in the hand. So it's up to you. I'm playing the French Overture right now by Bach, and we'll be going over that in a future tutorial. If you do... verses. Just that little touch of the pedal, I think it opens up the resonance of the piece. Okay. Now I'm done with my disclaimers. Let's get to the actual tutorial on the prelude to start, and then we will go over the fugue. The first thing that I want to talk about is reducing tension, because this is a piece that I have seen with students cause tension. They end up locking their hand into a position and then just playing digitally with the fingers. Like, some fingers might be flatter, some might be more curved. And one thing that I want you to think about is the weight of the arm and the arm itself making a direct line to the finger. Now, what I mean by that is you can kind of feel the weight of the arm behind each finger. Okay, as I come down, I'm not going to just stretch out my thumb and reach for that. I'm going to allow the hand and the wrist and the arm to move down. Okay, so in a very slow tempo, you can see that stepping up, and then it skips down, and then it steps back up. But the arm is involved, okay? And that's one thing that I want you to think about from the very first time you practice this, or if you're seeing this tutorial and you're already well into your studies of the piece, just go through slowly and think about the whole mechanism carrying the finger to the most convenient spot. The finger just kind of plays down, but the arm and the hand and the wrist, they're all carrying that finger to the most convenient spot. I remember Logan Skelton at Michigan, he would always say, your hand's really great at turning a doorknob, waving, and doing this. It's very bad at doing this quickly, okay? And so you don't want to be doing that, a lot of that type of kind of twisting or contorting motion when you're playing something like this. You want the arm to carry the finger into the position. Okay, so this was also, by the way, included in the Clavier Buchlein, hopefully I'm saying that correctly, for W.F. Bach. So as we go through this, I just wanted to mention that I'm not going to be doing a huge history lesson on each of these, and I won't be doing a huge formal analysis on the fugue because those are just so readily available on Google if you just type that in. We're going to be going over more basic and then more artistic things in this tutorial. Starting off, let's just go over the first few lines with some fingering. 2, 3, 4, 1, 4, 3, 2, 5, 2, 3, 4, 1, 4, 3, 2, 5, 3, 4, 5, 1, 3, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now here you have a few options. 1, 5, 4, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4. That is certainly an option. However, whenever possible, I do not like to isolate 5, 3, and 4. I would rather have you do something like 1, this is the last beat of bar 2, 1, 5, 3, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and then just come down to the 1 there. What that does is that puts your stronger fingers in charge. Same thing right here. You can do 1, 5, 4, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, but you can also use 1, 5, 3, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 4, 3, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 3, 4, 5, 1. Here, I probably would use 5, 4, 3, 5, 4, 3, 5, 2, 3, 5, 1, 3, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 5, 3, 2, 3. I want to talk for just a moment, now that we've gone over that. And by the way, the left-hand fingering is pretty basic. I'll go through that really quickly before I get to that next point. 5, 1, 3, 1, 5, 1, 2, 1, 5, 1, 5, 1, 5, 2, 5, 1, 5, 1, 2, 1, 5. Very basic, okay? The next point that I wanted to talk about is tempo. And there isn't a tempo indication given by Bach. I tend to like this prelude in a more sweet, calm manner because I think it contrasts better with the French overture fugue with all the dotted rhythms, very stately. You don't have to do that little ornament. That was just for fun. But if you go, which I think Glenn Gould's tempo is around 160. Now, he plays it brilliantly. There's, he is kind of the god of Bach's music. But okay, I personally like it a little bit more around Schiff, Daniel Barenboim's tempo, which I think was around 130. Because then it contrasts nicely with those dotted rhythms. Okay, getting beyond that idea of the finger being carried into position, just taking that a step further, there's a little exercise that I've made up recently that seems to really be helping my students reduce a lot of tension. And this is a balancing exercise. Okay, so one thing I want you to do is I want you to play a G sharp, okay, on the piano. Play this. And I would venture to guess that 100% of you, if you just went and did that at your piano, did not do this. Right? You probably did this. And then if I had you play an A sharp right after that, or this, you would probably be doing that exact same thing that I told you with the arm being behind the finger. So one thing you can do, if you ever notice tension creeping into your hands, play 3 notes. Play each note 3 times. And then sometimes you can feel how this is a circle being completed and then coming back up and around. That's just a nice little way to know the best way to place your fingers. You don't have to be here, way out on the whites, and then jump in for the blacks. You don't ever need to be completely straight on either. I just flew out to see Sergei Babayan and Daniil Trifonov, 2 concerts at the Gilmore Festival with my little daughter. Just such a highlight experience, our 2 favorite pianists. And it was interesting. There was one point where Trifonov was playing like this, and I think he was overdoing it a little. Like he was very into the music, very into the texture. It was very mysterious. I can't remember what piece it was. He played Szymanowski, Debussy Pour le Piano, Brahms' Third Sonata, and the Prokofiev Sarcasms. But he was like this. It just goes to show you don't always have to be straight on. Now, you probably don't want to be too much like this. This is very awkward. But feel free to, this is very natural to have some sort of movement of the hand like this. So as you play this, you might notice that the hand is very comfortable going into that angle rather than staying straight on and locking. beyond that, that's the first thing I want you to do. Once you do that, then you can go to a basic high finger practice. Continuing to employ that same angle, the arm carrying the hand, and then you can do a finger staccato practice, but still doing the angle. Because you do need active fingers when you play this piece. You can have the greatest, arm choreography, whatever you want to call it, ever, but if your fingers are terrible, you might get mush, okay? So I like that finger staccato for that reason. I remember teaching a cute little girl in Australia. Her name was Jennifer. I think she was 13 or 14. She played so well. I think she was playing Mendelssohn Concerto in G minor for me, a piece that I had played around her age as well. And I said, your fingers are so brilliant. You've got great facility. How do you practice? She said long, short rhythms. I was like, what else? And that's it. And that just was, obviously she was practicing expression and things like that. But so far as like a technical exercise, that really drove home to me. I always thought I was just kind of a geek. Like I love long, short rhythms. That's another way to practice. So the first 16th value in this piece is a rest. So that would be your long note or your long value, and then long. Short, long, 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 short, long. Okay, now if you're really comfortable, you can also do a long, short, 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 long, short, 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 long. That helps you to overlap your little figurations. I would just caution you to not go so fast that when you go back to put it into the context that it's all mushy and sloppy. All right, I've gone over quite a bit so far regarding the technical exercises. Let's talk a little bit more about the artistry at this point. Okay, so I would just think of a very light, short, but somewhat buoyant left hand. What I mean by that is that's sharp and pointed. This is sharp and kind of buoyant. I hold on to it just a little bit longer. Okay. Another thing that I want to talk about is the right hand ebbing and flowing with dynamic.